between primary and secondary reinforcement. Primary reinforcement is connected to a biological need. For example, we don't have to learn to find food reinforcing if we have been deprived food. It happens automatically. A secondary reinforcer is a learned reinforcer. Money, grades, praise, medals, certificates, those things are secondary reinforcers. Most of our behavior is controlled by secondary reinforcers. If you have a doubt, is this a primary or a secondary reinforcer? Ask yourself, a baby in the crib, would you ever use this? The answer is yes, then it's probably primary reinforcer, the biological reinforcer. The answer is no, a baby wouldn't know the value of this, well done, it's probably secondary reinforcer. The second distinction between positive and negative reinforcement. Now, positive reinforcement is for the label called a reward. But negative reinforcement is not the same as punishment. Negative reinforcement is to be reinforced by being able to avoid or escape from an aversive stimulus. So if you behave in order not to get hit, in order not to fail, in order not to get fired, in order not to get a ticket, what you're getting out of your behavior is not being exposed to something unpleasant. The frequency of the behavior needed to avoid the unpleasant increases. So with negative reinforcement, the behavior increases the frequency. The behavior that allows you to avoid or escape from the unpleasant stimulus. Now, suppose that you have a kid that's misbehaving, and maybe he's misbehaving in class, and he gets beaten up. And now he misbehaves again, and he gets beaten up. And now he's misbehaving more often. The more he's getting beaten up, the more he misbehaves. In that case, getting beaten up is functioning as a reward, a positive reinforcement. Because the attention he gets while he's beaten up is what makes the behavior increase in frequency. See, the normal child, if you get beaten up for doing something, he is less likely to do it while the punishing agent is present at least. But this kid does it more often. Obviously, he wants more of that. So it's not the stimulus he's trying to avoid, it's the stimulus he's trying to get. So this is a positive reinforcement, even though it doesn't sound like it would be positive for you. Judge whether it's positive or negative depending on the reaction of the subject, not depending on how you would have felt if you had experienced it. A partial or intermittent reinforcement is reinforcing some of the responses, not all of them. Continuous reinforcement is the reinforcing a single response. Remember the schedules of reinforcement. You have a fixed interval, a fixed waiting period before you can be reinforced. You have variable interval, the waiting period keeps changing. You have fixed ratio, a certain number of responses are required to qualify for a reinforcement. And you have variable ratio, the number of responses is changing. Any intermittent schedule makes the behavior more resistant to extinction. The variable ones make it particularly resistant to extinction. Remember the training procedures. Remember, avoidance training means that you learn to behave in such a way that you do not get to be exposed to the aversive stimulus. There's a negative reinforcement. And there is an SD, a discriminative stimulus, that tells you when to behave. Escape training doesn't have the SD. There's no warning signal. But if you behave, you stop the unpleasant stimulus. Omission training, of course, that's not going to be tested. So it's to give a positive reinforcement for not doing something. But punishment training is to give a negative reinforcement for not doing something. So your negative reinforcement is given to you if you do not do the bad behavior. So the frequency of not doing the bad behavior increases because it pays off by not getting the grounding or the unpleasant stimulus. If you do get punished, it means that you fail to get the negative reinforcement. You got the aversive stimulus. But please don't confuse punishment and negative reinforcement. They're not identical. Okay, then in memory, of course, remember Ebbinghaus. Remember the nonsense syllabus. Remember the curve of forgetting. Remember the fact that once you learn something, you forget most of what you have learned rather rapidly. And then forgetting slows down. And some of what you have learned tends to last and last and last and last. Now remember the three types of memory. Remember that the sensory memory or the sensory register holds memory only for about a quarter of a second. Then short-term memory is a little longer, that's over a second. But if you use rehearsal, you can maintain the material. Long-term memory lasts indefinitely. Short-term memory has 7-item storage capacity. Long-term memory has unlimited storage capacity. The hippocampus seems to be involved in the storage of long-term memories. Remember the recency effect and the primacy effect and the serial position effect. You might be questioned from those. Remember mnemonics, memory tricks, organized speech, and remember photographic memory, or eidetic imaging. You might be questioned of that. Remember the decay theory. The decay theory argues that memories fade as time passes, because the facilitation left by the memory gradually fades to use. There's evidence suggesting that the decay theory is probably not correct, because very old memories can be triggered by stimulation of the brain, indicating that it didn't fade just because they were used. Anyway, on Monday, you are urged to demonstrate your memory